Hey everyone, thanks for checking out one of our past Insta lives. We hope you enjoy the content, and if you do, we hope you'll follow us at Cake Decorating School on Insta and join in for our regular weekly lives. So we had a request last week for buttercream tulips, so I thought I'd do an easy version with a Russian tip, and then a slightly more involved version using a curved petal tip, so it's a number 123. And even though I have bigger ones that can do slightly more dramatic tulips in a larger size with kind of larger petals, I thought this would be better since it's such a common tip that most people have. And so it's a larger size curved tip. And basically what you're doing is you're piping the inside and then piping the petals around it, and you're doing kind of the same work that you're doing with this, and it allows you to vary the size, give it a little more drama, a little more height, a little more detail, make it a little more realistic. But these are definitely easier. And so just to show you all what I did cake-wise, I did a little quick version with one on the side, one on the top. And it's a great example of how those look on cakes, because they're just a little oversized for cupcakes. So even on the tiny cake, it gives it lots of nice drama and looks really beautiful. So I'm gonna put these to the side for right now, and we'll just talk briefly and hopefully not too boringly about the tips that we're using. The Russian tips that I have don't actually have numbers on them, so I've drawn the shape of the opening so you all can see. It almost has a little Y in the middle that's that nice center, whatever it is, pistil, I think is the correct term, and then a series of holes that would be the stamens, and then kind of nested 3 curved openings. So there's an inside that's a little smaller and then the outside ring that's a little larger. And that gives you that nice look of a tulip. And so when I loaded the bag, I did purple around the outside and some yellow and green in the middle, along with some lighter purple. And that gives you that look like the stamens and the centers of the flowers and the petals on the outside, right? And so I will show you really quickly that opening. So hopefully we'll just let that focus a little bit. I tried to squeeze some color out so you could just kind of see the way it looks and how I loaded the bag. And then I'll knock that out of the way. So hopefully you all can see the openings. That's a better angle. So you can kind of see where I'm talking about, where it has that Y shape in the middle, and then the dots around it and the 2 sets of curved petals, one smaller, one larger around the outside. And that'll give you a nice tulip shape. But there's a whole bunch of different types of Russian tips. You can buy sets, just buy a couple individually. They're really easy to use, so they're a nice thing to have in your decorating kit. The number 123 is the other one that I'm using, and you can see it has a nice large curved opening, and that's for making curved petals. So if you're using this to do roses, it's gonna make the petals curve outwards away from the center of the rose. Or if you're using it just to pipe, say, flowers on your flower nail flat, when you do it, right, you'll notice it makes a nice, really cupped shape curved petal, right? So you can use that to create a different effect. So normally you would hold it like I just did, right, flat against the nail, pipe your petals. We're gonna hold it straight up and down today to pull petals straight up. And we're using that curved shape of the opening to give it the look like tulip petals, right? So in addition to those, I've used 2 sizes of leaf tip, 352, which we used before, and a larger decorator size that's a 366. So it's the same style opening, right? It's V-shaped. Hopefully my buttercream is still warm enough. Sorry, it's cold in the studio this week. So just try and warm that up. There we go. So everything is nice and firm, which is great, but it makes it a little hard to demo, right? So it'll just give you bigger leaf, right? Versus this little guy. And that's also nice and firm too. There we go. So versus the 352. So really only difference between the two is the size. One will give you nice larger leaves and one smaller. And then for the centers, I've used a number 18 to do the center, so it's just a star tip, right? And instead of the normal star that we would usually do, I'm gonna just keep piping with it, right? and make a little column, right? So it's going to be a nice, right, little cone, basically. And that gives us that look like the center of a flower. So it's not perfect, it's not exactly true to life, but when you combo all the things together, it gives you a nice, realistic looking feel to it. We're actually not going to see too much of it because it's going to be contained within the petals, right? And so then I've used a number 3 with some kind of mossy green color, and I'm going to use that for the stamens around that center pistil. And instead of doing just dots, I'm going to kind of extend them. So I'm going to start as a dot, and then I'm going to pull up while I'm still piping and make a nice little spike. So hopefully everyone can kind of see that, right? So that's what I'm going to do in the center and those around it, and that's going to build up a central mound of frosting to support those petals, right? Because you can't pull those tall petals on the tulip without something inside supporting it. The buttercream just won't support itself. So I'm going to move this stuff to the side. I'm happy to bring it back later, just clean up my little area a little bit. And I'll start with the Russian tips since that's a little easier. And then I'll move to the individually piped petals on the tulips, right? So with my Russian tips, I find it is easiest when I'm decorating, right? I've started with just a flat iced cupcake. To start, pipe some leaves. You can do them all over, right? Or you can just do a few. And that's really up to you. Sometimes I don't like too much frosting. So I hope this is going to behave today. There we go. It got a little cold while I was talking. And so what I'm going to do is hold it just up off the surface, squeeze, and let that frosting connect, and then squeeze as I pull up, right? And then I'm going to stop squeezing and pull away. And you can see that it'll continue to kind of pull out of the bag, and that gives you that nice kind of natural look for your tulips, where not all the petals are going to be the same length, and they're not all going to be exactly perfect. So I'm just kind of going to work my way here, right? Do the same thing. And sometimes this is the problem today. When things are really cold, the frosting doesn't want to stick to itself and doesn't want to connect. So this is actually a good little moment to show you how to fix a little mistake. So we're going to pipe on top of the green, so it doesn't matter if we get a little purple in there. And just remove that gently with a spatula and go back and give it a go again. So I'm going to make sure it's really well connected and then pull up, and there we go, right? So all fixed. And so I think I'm just going to do a little trio of tulips, right? Beautiful. And I'm going to go around and finish it off, right, with some more little leaves. And we just have a beautiful, simple, easy to do way to top cupcakes. And I've done them as well where you can just start with a plain cupcake, go all around with the Russian tip and do tulips all over, and just go back and dot some leaves in between. That gets to be a little too much frosting sometimes, and it's a lot more work. So this is just kind of an alternate way to do them, where you can just put a little trio of tulips on top, finish them off with a few leaves. They're super cute. So let me just clean up my mess over here to the side. Sorry, it's very dry in here today too. And I'm going to break out my flower nail and demonstrate the tulips that I was doing. So I'm going to start on my nail, and I'm just going to give it a squish of frosting, right? So build up a little bit of volume, and then I'm going to use the tip the way I would to make the center of a rose, right? So that's just building up a little height and giving me a center to pipe on, right? I'm going to put my bag to the side and use my number 18 with my yellow, right? And just pipe that little spike in the middle. And then I'm going to go all the way around that spike with my number 3 tip and just pull straight up next to it, right? And because that 18 is already in the center, it gives a nice support for those lines, and I can make them longer than I normally would. and it gives them some height, right? And you can always go and do a second row if you feel like you need to, right? And so here is the most important thing I figured out while I was doing this. So normally when you hold this, right, you'll see the tip is kind of at a slanted angle. I'm gonna actually kind of rotate my wrist over so that the opening is flat, right? And that's gonna allow the frosting to attach all at once. If I hold it the way I normally would, the part at that top edge is gonna come out and curve around and ruffle a little bit. So I wanna make sure that I'm holding it so that that tip is flat against that cone, right? So it's a slightly awkward position, and I'm just going to pull a petal up and kind of over the top, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and do 3 short little petals. I'm not too worried about them being the exact same size. I'm just worried about getting them on there really nice, nested together. There we go. And making sure that they're kind of enclosed around that center. Now, typically, I would switch to a larger tip to go around the outside, so I just have 3 petals. But since this is such a common one, and sometimes the larger ones can be a little hard to find, or you can only buy them as sets, I just went ahead and did 5. So while it's not quite perfect for a tulip, I'm gonna do the same thing, line it up at the bottom so that it's nice and flat, pull that petal, right? And then you'll see you have that structure of the inside petals, and it's gonna allow you to pull a nice, long, upright petal, right? That kind of curves over the top. And I'm gonna go all the way around and do them right next to each other. And that gives us, you can see already from the side, the beautiful look of a tulip. Right, so for each one, just make sure you go back, start at the base. It's nice and well attached, right? And that gives us, you'll see too, kind of a fatter base and a nice tapered center because we're pulling it towards the center every time. And if you look at it top down, sorry, it's sliding around on my nail, you can see in the center, you can barely see the green and yellow, but there's just those hints of the stamens inside. And you can always play around and open it up a little bit too, if you want. Right, and those are beautiful. You can pipe them ahead of time, leave them on a tray in the refrigerator or the freezer, depending on where you are and how cold you need them to be to handle them. And they're perfect for doing the entire top of a cake. You can build up a mound of frosting in the center and give them a nice kind of gradation across the top, and it makes a beautiful bunch of tulips, right? And if you want to, hopefully it's stable enough, I can go ahead and move it over to the cupcake without having to wait. If I can't, and I mess this up, then I'll go ahead and pipe one on the cupcake, right? So I'm just gonna use my big leaf tip to pipe a little nest for this. And then I'm just gonna gently, if I can, without hopefully messing it up, try and move this guy over. Oh, I might be able to do it. So if it's firmer, you probably won't mess up your bottom like I just did, but even so, still beautiful. It's a nice way to top off a cupcake or finish off a cake. You can always go all the way around it with flowers, right? So that is the basics of doing piped buttercream tulips. I hope you all enjoyed today's mini lesson.